One of the lies I keep hearing about the US economy is how the wage growth has been enough to keep up with inflation and the higher costs of living, and it's not a big deal that everything has gone up in price because people's wages have gone up by more than that. And I've already debunked this myth or lie in previous videos, because one thing they're not accounting for is even if wages went up slightly higher than inflation, it doesn't matter, because by the time you subtract taxes from those higher wages, people still end up with less, okay? It's not like anybody's earning tax-free money here, because everything we buy and everything we earn is getting taxed 24/7. But one of the biggest issues with wages not keeping up with inflation, guys, has been rent, okay? According to Zillow, actually, rent in the most major US metropolitan areas rose about 1.5 times faster than wages in the past 4 years. That's a problem. In fact, a giant problem. Nationwide, they figured out that rents climbed about 30% from 2019 to 2023, while wages only went up 20%. And it's not even just the rents that obviously went up, everything else that we buy and need has gone up. So this already right there, this one single data point, completely debunks this whole lie that people's wages and pay are keeping up with the rate of inflation, because it's obviously not. And one thing that we know for a fact is the rental inflation is one of the main reasons the CPI is not coming down. Okay, it's a big chunk of these higher CPI readings than what the Fed wants to see, because the rents are still too damn high. In fact, Zillow determined that rental housing costs outpace salaries in all but 6 of the 50 top metros. Now, everybody, including Janet Yellen over at the Treasury, thinks that rent prices are going to come down, and they have been coming down a little bit, which I've also covered here on the channel, but nothing real substantial. We're talking a few dollars a month when it does come down. So nothing that's really going to make a big dent in anybody's monthly budget just yet. They look at New York City, for example, where rents rose 7 times faster than wages during this time period. So in 4 years, the rents went up 7 times faster than wages, guys. How is that sustainable? How are people going to continue paying for this? Now, I saw one person say in a comment in one of my videos recently, like, oh, this guy's just talking about how people feel rather than real economic data. Well, no, the real economic data is that the rents are rising faster than what people are actually making. That's a real economic data point. People aren't just feeling like the rent's more expensive, first of all. But I do like talking about people's feelings on the economy and what they're going through. And I've already gone over a few different surveys in the past couple of weeks, but I just came across another one today. This one's also from the Federal Reserve, and its annual survey of financial well-being. And according to this, 72% of respondents said that they're doing okay, and that was in 2023, so it's already lagging data, and that's down from 73% the year prior, and in 2021 it was 78%. So the amount of people who are saying they're doing okay is still steadily declining right now. The group of people that say they're getting hit the hardest right now are young parents who have children under 18 years old, because 64% of them said that they're doing okay financially right now, and back in 2021 it was 75%. So that number is quickly declining. Not a big surprise, considering kids are super expensive. But you see, then my problem with all this is they go on to start spewing more of the nonsense in this story, guys. They start saying things like, well, there's a lot of things we can look at that shows the economy's never been better than now, and they always point to the unemployment being under 4%. We've talked about this countless times, and that doesn't matter, because people still aren't making enough money to keep up with the cost of living. That's the bottom line. There's talking about how consumer spending went up 5.8% in March from a year earlier, and is up roughly 30% from pre-pandemic levels. Well, what else is up 30% from pre-pandemic levels? Inflation. They're using this as an argument that the economy is strong, when in fact these increases in consumer spending are just to keep up. And when they look at this Fed survey of well-being, this is the number one concern that people have. It's inflation, guys. People aren't stupid. They're realizing that these higher prices are starting to dig into their wallets. I mean, people have been realizing this for a long time now, but as time goes on, the problem just gets worse. It's not getting better. They say that the share of survey respondents who reported price increases as their main source of financial challenges rose to 35%, And in 2016, it was only 8% of people saying that. Now it's 35%. And they're all baffled by this data because, well, inflation peaked in 2022, yet, people's sentiment on this is still going up because in 2022, only 33% of people said that inflation's the biggest problem. Well, I think we can all agree that inflation is lagging and it takes time for these prices to catch up. And over the past 6 months to a year is when we've all really felt these prices start to go up more than ever. And then they go on to say here that adjusted for prices, U.S. disposable income reached their all-time high in the first quarter of 2021 at a level that was 10% higher in the first quarter of this year. Well, yeah, no kidding, guys, because now inflation is a much bigger problem than it was in the first quarter of 2021. In fact, back then, I would argue to say that a lot of the price increases we're feeling today didn't even exist yet. Of course, we were starting to feel it in housing and rent prices back then, but that was basically it. You didn't see the food prices skyrocket yet. You didn't see the price of cars skyrocket yet. You didn't see the utilities spike yet, and everything else that goes along with just living a normal life. Especially insurance, that was a big one that has gone up a lot in the past year for everybody. And the reality is consumer sentiment, which is how people feel about the economy in general, is still down 21% from its reading in February 2020 before the pandemic, guys. So that right there tells you people overall have a more pessimistic and negative view on the economy. So it's not just me making all these doom and gloom videos, it's everybody. People are thinking this because they know it's true. Now here's another one that I think kind of contradicts other survey data we've heard in the past, but they say in this Fed study that 63% of Americans would be able to cover a $400 financial emergency by paying for it in cash. So 63% have that $400 cash buffer laying around, but also that means 37% don't. And let's face it, guys, let's be realistic, okay? A $400 emergency is nothing anymore. $400 is not what it was 5 years ago because of inflation, Having a $400 emergency today is like having a $150 emergency back in 2020. Those are other things that people don't look at. They talk about inflation and how much things have gone up, but they don't talk about, okay, we're using the same figure, this whole $400 emergency benchmark, as if that's somehow equivalent to the same $400 emergency surveys that we heard about 5-6 years ago, when clearly they're not, because $400 is worth less than it ever was in the past. But really, to me, all of this is still looking very grim. Only 48% of people say that they're not living paycheck to paycheck right now, which means more than 50% are. But they say, oh, that's nothing to worry about because that rate has remained steady. So basically, we're still seeing the same amount of people living paycheck to paycheck as we were pre-pandemic. So we don't worry about that. That was a problem before, but at least if we can just keep the numbers the same, we can count that as a success. What else does this Fed survey reveal? It reveals that 65% of Americans say that the changes in the price of goods and services has worsened their financial situation. So, that's the crazy thing. They're like, yeah, we're doing okay. 73% we're doing okay. But the reality is, more than half are saying that these higher prices are making their life harder to live and harder to afford. This is the most alarming stat of all, if you ask me, guys. It says that 17% of US adults reported that in October of 2023, they didn't pay all their bills in full. So that's almost 20% of the population that's not paying all their bills. I've been talking about the delinquencies going up and people are like, oh, this is also negative or whatever. It's reality. This is something that people are admitting when they do these surveys with the Federal Reserve. It's something that can be proved when we look at the data charts that I showed you guys last week, yet nobody wants to look at that. You also have 19% of renters reporting that they fell behind on their rent at least once in the past year. So that's just barely keeping your head above water, guys. As far as I'm concerned, if you even had 1 month throughout a year-long lease that you struggled to come up with the rent money, that means you are just one slip up or one emergency away from not being able to pay at all. People have also been reporting how much childcare is taking a big chunk out of their budget now. 40% of parents are using paid childcare right now, and the median monthly cost is $800 a month. That is a massive extra expense for a family to take on right now. And they say that parents who need 20 hours a week or more of childcare can run them as much as $1,100 per month. And parents are reporting that their childcare expenses are equivalent to 70% of their monthly mortgage payment. So if you want to have kids, just understand it's going to be like owning two houses, okay? So anybody out there who's thinking about having kids and hasn't had them yet, just understand having kids is like having a second home without any of the benefits. But they say despite all these struggles, 34% of Americans said that their household income had increased in 2023. 38% reported that their monthly spending also increased. So once again, you're just moving in circles, guys. It doesn't matter if your wages went up. Everybody's wages went up, but they haven't gone up to the extent that has been necessary to keep up with the bills. Going back to the very first Zillow data point that we talked about here, that the rent, just the rent alone, is rising faster than the wages. And if you think you're safe because you bought a house and you have a mortgage and you're going to be having that same mortgage payment for the next 30 years, sorry to disappoint you, but you're not in the clear either, because you're going to have rising property taxes, you're going to have rising homeowners insurance, and you're responsible for all of the maintenance and repairs on that property, which also costs more than it ever used to, thanks to inflation. So the study says here that Americans' perceptions of the local and national economy showed modest improvement over the prior year, yet remain much less favorable than in 2019 before the pandemic. Whoa. Shocker, huh? Last week I did a video also about Home Depot and how people are starting to spend less money there. They missed their earnings report. It was lower than expected, and their store sales across the country have been falling by over 2% year over year. And now I just saw some new information about home remodeling is now down 1.2% in the first quarter of 2024. So this directly relates to this Home Depot story and reinforces the idea that people are just not spending the money on home improvement and remodeling right now. And you can say it's for a couple different reasons. One of it's definitely cost and the higher interest rates, like we talked about in that video. But another part of the story is because people aren't buying houses. So when the home sales are in the tank like they are right now, there's less incentive or reason for anybody to be spending money renovating a house, because they're not buying a house to renovate. And most likely the people who already own houses are just trying to save enough money to hang on to that house rather than think about pouring more money into it right now. And according to this Harvard study, they say that home spending and renovations and repair spending will fall to $449 billion this year, which would represent a 7% drop from 2023. Also, they've already noticed that the spending in the first quarter has gone down by 1.2%, which is the first annual decline in more than a decade. And they say historically, annual growth in home improvement spending has averaged 5%, guys. So this is a category of consumer spending that normally just goes up every single year, and now it's starting to fall. They say this is due to all sorts of different factors with the economy. One of them is high interest rates, like we talked about in the Home Depot video. Also, it's high inflation, and like we just talked about, the home sales are in the gutter. Typically, when somebody is going to renovate a house, they spend the most money on renovations and repairs in the first 3 years that they own the home. So if you're having less home sales, then you're just going to see a big slowdown in this sort of spending. Their data suggests that we're just going to see these numbers decline at least going into next year. Beyond that, they don't really know. Nobody can see the future. They don't have a crystal ball. But they think we're going to see this spending continue to slow down, which obviously everybody's spending is going to continue to slow down as inflation just takes away a bigger chunk of everybody's paycheck. But there is an upside to this. You guys always want a little positive story. Well, the positive here is because there's less money being spent on renovations right now, it's easier and maybe arguably a little bit cheaper to hire a contractor for all the work than it was a year ago. So if you're somebody that did hold out and didn't spend any money, and you have the money for a renovation, you're not gonna have to go in debt to do it, now might be a good time to do it, and it'll be easier to get help. But of course, a lot of the reason that we're not seeing the homes sell is because there hasn't been as many homes for sale. And in fact, 1/3 of the single family homes for sale right now in the US are all brand new houses, guys. And for the most part, people don't renovate brand new houses. So the brand new houses are really saving the day right now when it comes to the housing market. And you can say whatever you want about brand new houses, it's not built as good as the old houses and da 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 da. But the reality is, people need a place to live, and they're being offered a brand new house for the same price or even less than an existing home. That's a pretty appealing proposition for a lot of home buyers, and they come with a warranty. There's less chance they're gonna have to do anything to the house after they move in, etc. But I think the existing home sales will get there, guys, because they talked to a Redfin real estate agent in this story, and here's what they said. Buyers are having a hard time finding single family homes in their budget because not many homeowners are letting go of their houses, and those who are listing their houses tend to price too high because they haven't come to terms with the fact that prices have come down from their 2022 peak. Builders have a better understanding of the current market, so they're pricing fairly, offering mortgage rate buy downs and providing other concessions to attract buyers. And this is why the home builders are winning right now and the existing home sellers are not. Even as of March of 2024, there's about an 8.3 month supply of new construction homes on the national housing market. And compared to existing homes, it's only 3.2 months supply. So clearly, buying a brand new house is still where it's at if you want to get the best deal, if you want to have the most available choices, and if you want to get the most incentives and maybe even a lower interest rate, because the home builders will offer you buy down in the mortgage rate. Sometimes it's even permanent. I've seen them buy down mortgage rates to 4.99%, guys, for 30 years. So there's no way you're getting a 5% rate right now with a traditional loan buying a resale house anywhere. But like this real estate agent said in this story, that the home sellers still haven't caught up with the fact that their house is not worth as much as it was almost 2 years ago, because the peak of the housing market was in June or July of 2022 in most areas across the country. There are a few outliers where prices are now higher than they were then, but it's very few and far between, guys. And that's why I think anybody who's thinking about buying a house right now just needs to cool it, okay? You can still do it, but there's no reason to have the FOMO, like, oh my God, if I don't buy this year, then next year I'll be priced out of the market. Those days are over. The real estate market is flatlining, guys. It's like flatlining in the movie, okay? The heart stops beating. It's just flatlining. And in many cases, it's already starting to come down. So I think now's the time to be smart about your home purchase, do your diligence like we talked about in the condo video. And if you're in a market where, you feel like you need to overpay for the property or, waive all the contingencies and stuff still, I think that's a really stupid idea right now. I really do. That's my honest opinion. But if you are somebody that does need help finding a place or selling a house here in the United States, I have a link for that down in the description below. I can set you guys up with a real estate agent completely for free. It's no cost to you, and it helps the channel if you use it, so I appreciate that. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.